I'm Ted Myers with the Cognitive Portfolio, and today I have with me Ewoud de Kok. He is the CEO and founder of FeedbackFruits. FeedbackFruits supports advanced course and learning design through a pedagogy-driven approach. It's great to have you with us today, Ewoud.
Thank you very much, Ted, for having me, and thank you for being hosting such a fantastic podcast.
It's a pleasure. Today, Ewoud's dialing in virtually from the Netherlands. So, I'd love to jump off and just ask you, what does FeedbackFruits do? What is a pedagogy-driven approach to course design?
Yeah, thank you, Ted. Yeah, so what we do is FeedbackFruits offers technology that supports pedagogical learning methods that we know really engage students. And I guess as a context element to it, we focus ourselves on higher education worldwide. And what we do is we have a sort of fruit basket full of different fruits, and every different fruit is a tool that supports a specific pedagogical method. And these methods are not necessarily new. Those pedagogies, those designs, they are already there since the 70s, 80s, 90s. We know that they work. However, the core problem is scaling these methods. So if you have a teacher that teaches 20, 50 to 100 students doing very interactive and a bit more complex methods, you can imagine are hard to do well. What scales well is the traditional design, right? The teacher in front of the 10 students, 100 students, well, just add a few extra chairs or add a video, and you can just reach with that design. You can it scales, that pedagogy skills very well. However, everyone knows that pedagogy is outdated, right? That's the pedagogy that doesn't work anymore. It's especially not for the new generation of students. And we have to, I think we will move away from that one size fits all pedagogy to much more diverse type of pedagogies, which are much more engaging. However, organizing those pedagogies, those learning designs at scale is still hard if there's not technology really designed for that pedagogical use case. And that's what we mean with being a bit more pedagogical driven. What we find a lot at teachers that try to use these type of methods, they do that with technology that hasn't been designed exactly for that purpose. Think about Excel sheets and other type of technology. These people don't have a private life anymore. And that's a waste because they really care for their courses and they really care for their students' learning. So we help them. Right, we help them to get their life back. Literally, this is what we hear back from teachers. That's one thing, but the other thing is we allow other teachers that are not willing to give up their private life, which I very much understand, to also start using these methods in order to increase that student engagement that we are after. So yeah, we are, I would say, a catalyst. Just summarizing, we see ourselves as a catalyst in a transition that higher education is going through from a static traditional method to much more diverse type of methods. And what we're good at is the technology for that pedagogical, for these course designs. Yeah, as a summary.
That's a great mission. Scaling is always key, and being able to allow teachers to make a greater impact. That's a great mission. So I'd love to know, in the virtual world now, how has your mission changed, if so, and how have, your interactions with students and teachers and the uses of your platform and technology changed? Have you seen an increase in adoption? Have you seen more challenges? I imagine that this is a really great opportunity for an approach in a company like yours.
Yeah, so interesting that, yeah. So when it comes to that specific, when it comes to our adoption in numbers, I mean, we are looking at graphs, and the usage, if you look at that graph over 2 years, you hardly see any usage in the first year. And then you see a lot of usage in the second year. Not that we didn't have a lot of usage in the first year, but just as an order of magnitude changes. So yes, of course, we've seen tremendous adoption when it comes to technology, which was forced, right? And I think there are two ways of looking at this. I guess for us, it's about improved pedagogy. It's not necessarily about online learning. I mean, of course, online learning is often a method in which you can teach, right, and in which you can learn. But it's not necessarily the holy grail. The holy grail is better learning. whether that is offline, blended, or online. And what we do, our sort of design criteria for us, is that we want to make sure that introducing technology in education should lead to more and better human interaction. And this can only be done if that learning design is done well. Because let's reflect on the offline learning that we are familiar with, right? A student gets in class, has 5 minutes to chat with their neighbors, drink a coffee, then is quiet for most of them for 2 hours, and then walks away again. What is the value of that human interaction? It's not high. I think it can be much, much, much higher. And this is the opportunity of, for example, blended learning, right? And where, of course, everyone is aware of flipping the classroom model. I think that's the first attempt towards trying to improve through digitalization of learning, try to improve that human interaction while it's there. So if you look at what COVID did, COVID got much more teachers to actually start experimenting with technology, but it did not necessarily was all success, which I think has to do with the following. A system that was already broken, which is a traditional learning design. If you bring that online, it just becomes more painful. But let's realize the system was already broken, right? So to me, being online, being offline is not necessarily the most interesting element to it, because it's just a way in which learning is done. But the learning design, the scaffolding approach toward how students are asked to learn, right? For example, take peer feedback or take expert groups. I mean, these are methods that can be applied online, offline, in a blended format. And that's what we should be focusing on, in my opinion. Those methods, those improved methods, which we know work better. And then I would say I reflect on the sort of the discussion around online learning now because of COVID, etc. I reflect on that as being a discussion that takes place in a very early field and a pioneering field, and where people just don't exactly know what they are searching for. They just experience something and they give an opinion. I think we're really at the beginning of course design, and that course design is going to, like the first website, right? The first website ever made was once called very innovative, and it was at that stage in time. However, if we look at it right now, it's terrible. The design is terrible. It takes, I don't know, 20 minutes to find out how long, when the shop opens, etc. Which was a fine for that period in time, because you had to drive there. It would have taken you 2 hours, and if you were for a closed store, that would have been a bummer. So for that period, it was fun. But it kept continuing to be innovating, and I think that that's going to happen with course design as well. And I hope we will, from a practical perspective, of course, we will talk about whether it's offline, online, blended. But from a pedagogical perspective, I think the questions that should be asked are much more interesting. And I think that that's why we should be after. But of course, what we've seen with COVID is that at least a bigger group of people starting to realize the potential of technology. And I think that is a big thing. I mean, everyone says like we're working in an industry that is still developing itself, like in a market, you could say, so that's still developing itself. So they're still in sort of the modus to find out new things. And in that sense, we have been propelled 5 years in the future, in our opinion. If we use our own calculations and we sort of use certain indicators to tell how well developed a specific institution is, right, of higher education. So where are they standing in their pedagogical development trajectory? But we also use that for teachers. And we definitely, we plotted a certain expectations over time. And because of COVID, we all of a sudden see that has made a tremendous leapfrog. And I would say that is exciting at one hand, of course, for the company, but it's also a responsibility, because it means that since we are considered to be one of the leaders in this field, it is a responsibility also to live up to that promise.
Absolutely. That's a great answer. You know, I've never considered, the side that if you take a bad process and digitize it, it's still a bad process just online. So taking a step back and really evaluating what are courses, how are they being designed, I think there's huge value in that. And I'd love to follow up on that. So where do you see the future of course design in your mind feasibly, what would the ideal learning experience look like?
That is fantastic. I have to admit, I don't know that. So just like, I guess, the first website designer didn't know how the ideal website would look like, right? That is something that we have to find out together. Right? One of the ways in which we did that, which we do that actively, is by having designed a do tank. In this do tank, we try to connect ourselves with the innovators out there in the world and try to think with them and design with them and build with them new type of learning designs, evaluate those designs and try to improve them in order to sort of start measuring, start understanding, and start improving, and thereby leading the way. So this do tank is set out there as a sort of searchlight in order to try to answer that question, right? Every day, people working in the do tank stand up with that exact question. However, so I unfortunately can't give that answer. The answer that I can give is what I think the outcome of that learning design is, right? So the students that are taking that learning design of the future, how is that experience? I feel that is an experience of, well, I might be talking a bit too much into founder vision type of words, but almost a form of enlightenment. What I mean is, what is learning truly? Learning, in my opinion, the definition that I take is about a lot about perfection. And I don't mean, of course, if we take Bloom, right, and the types of learning that you can have, of course, there's knowledge transfer, et cetera, that I just refer as the easy part, right? That's the ones that are really transforming a human, transforming how you act, how you behave, how you think at the world, and get you close. I mean, that is about the ones that change your perspective. So the experiences that you had a certain opinion at one point in time, or you didn't know what you didn't know, right? But that really help you enrich the world, such that after that learning experience, you are more excited about the world. You see the world in a different light. And I think this is one of the elements that is a founding principle, another founding principle that we build ourselves on. That is, people become closer to who they truly are if they develop themselves. And they develop these beautiful things of who they actually already are. And I think that if that happens, the very beautiful side of people appears, and actually a good side of people appears. People that are more grounded and are more looking around, right? First, you need to love yourself because you can love someone else, or appreciate yourself before you can appreciate someone else. But that appreciation for someone else in the society that we live is so extremely important. And I think that learning design should contribute to that perspectivism change, which gives a sort of delighted experience for students, which brings them closer to who they are, such that they can become a better, a nicer person in our society and in the world. And I think that is what true learning is.
That's actually beautiful. I can think back to a couple of books or really conversations I've had that have completely, shifted my perspective. And, there's a before period and an after period in my mind. And just thinking back, like, I haven't had a lot of those experiences in a more traditional school setting. And so I wouldn't even have called that learning, but that's really what it was. It was learning more about myself and learning more about my perspectives and just opening up your worldview and being able to throw a new lens on things. And that's amazing. And I don't know, maybe,
That's it.
Maybe we just haven't had the best design in our courses, that we haven't gotten those experiences through the institution, so to speak. But the fact that you see that gap and you're trying to bring that to a more scalable amount of students, I think that's amazing.
Thank you, Chad. Yeah, so sorry. So one thing that I just want to emphasize, right? It's no one's fault, right? That it is the case, that it is the way that it is right now. I don't think there's people really to blame for it. It's just that, so we can't say, you universities, you're doing such a bad job, or your teachers, you're doing such a bad job. It's just so we don't know. Everyone sees this. Everyone understands that this is what we should be after. It's just that we haven't found a way in how we are going to take that journey, right? And that is, I guess, what we're trying to do together. And just want to have emphasized that. Thank you, Dad. Yeah.
No, of course. It's really just, we're all born into our situations, and we do the best with what we can. So
That's it.
you're doing the best with what you have. So that kind of brings me into a little bit of a higher level question. I'd love to know a little bit more about your background and your experience, and also how that's led you to your role now as the founder and CEO of a learning impact course design firm.
Thank you. Yeah, so a bit about my background. I'm 34 at the moment. Just turned, well, a couple of years already our father, so I'm in a transition myself as a person as well. But if I reflect back on that previous experiences, then I think the relevant experiences here are basically the fact that, and actually they already go way back. You know that this is the funny thing about cleaning up your room. You get to, I'm not really good at throwing things away. Sorry, personal thing, but sort of it started. The amount of stuff started clashing. I really had to clean up. And then when I started cleaning up, I started to realize how long I was already committed to trying to work in improving my learning. And when I was, I think 12, I got into this student committee, and then trying to working with teachers to how can we improve it. And I continued that. I my bachelor's at the university. I did that as well. I was asked for an accreditation committee, so I was being able to sort of see other courses and studies actually in the Netherlands specifically here for very much detail. And then I continued doing my master's also. It was Master Sustainable Energy. It was just 3 years old, and we sort of made a 2.0 version. So we suggested new courses and how the whole thing should be happening. And the funny thing is that if I say it this way, it would have made so much sense that I took this next step. But when I was doing this, I wasn't so aware of that. I had always the drive to start a sustainable energy company, right? So this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to focus myself on sustainable energy. This is why I studied it. This is why this is what I've been doing. So I was looking for a company to start, or a problem to solve, or the problem that I wanted to solve, but a way to solve that climate change problem, right? That I was after, and somehow I felt into education and higher education, this specific case, and later I started realizing, yeah, but wait a minute, that climate change problem that I tried to tackle, where does it come from? It comes from, there's not one person in this world that says, let's just mess up the climate and I don't care about the future and the future generations. There's no one here. But still we act like it. How comes? It's a system problem. It's a problem in which education actually, I think, is the only solution to work, because climate change is not the only sort of, in my opinion at least, not the only effect of this problem. There are more things to it. So if we really improve education and we make that better in what I just explained in what I think better education is, then we'll improve a couple of these problems at the same time. And I think there's a lot of need for it. So I sort of stumbled into education by my university at that point in time. I came up with all new ideas and how we should do that. And then they said, if you haven't been, I had a meeting with quite high up person that had some budget, and that told me, if you didn't go to the Chamber of Commerce in between this meeting and the next meeting we've planned, the next meeting will not continue. So this sort of forced me into entrepreneuring in edtech. I always like to sort of reflect on that like that. And that's how I got started. And then I just got addicted to it. And we're still very much at the beginning, if you would ask me. So that's a bit of my background.
Of course, thank you. And I'll wrap up here with one final question. Thinking about all the younger or even older students, problem solvers, entrepreneurs, teachers, what would be your advice for someone who's still looking for their problem to solve, or just starting out on their journey?
So, okay, my sole advice here is never ever forget about that core problem that you want to solve. If you really have felt it, like this is what I want to change, keep that, and never let someone argue you differently, or if if they really can't, if they can't change your perspective or demotivate you, but okay, it's too hard. When I started in education, it was the least sexiest industry as an entrepreneur to start. People would make fun of me with valuations, like the lowest ones are always given to the edtech companies, if they would have even get to that point, right? That's sort of the industry, but that shouldn't matter. Like the problem that you want to solve, be very persistent there. However, be extremely open to how you think that problem should be solved, because it's really hard to do this and you're probably wrong, and that doesn't matter. And you have to understand by actually trying something and getting feedback, and trying something, getting feedback, to understand exactly how you iterate at that product market fit phase, at least when it comes to companies, how you do that. So don't ever, I would say, if you really understand the problem that you try to solve, don't let that go. But the way that you want to solve it, often you fall in love with that way. That's what you have to let go, and be open to iterate that a lot. At least that is the experience that I've gone through, and that has brought me to where we are right now. And I would say that that is one of the biggest lessons that I think I can share to that audience.
Can't think of a better way to wrap it up than with some great feedback from the CEO and founder of FeedbackFruits. Ewoud, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Ted. Bye-bye.
Amazing.